and a very warm welcome to the Crash MotoGP podcast, episode 24. And at the moment, MotoGP is having a little bit of a rest for a week at least, but never fear, we at Crash certainly are not, and we have got a very exciting show today, as well as discussing the latest news on MotoGP's record-breaking provisional calendar for 2022 and the goings-on currently in Indonesia. We have a special guest on the show for you this week, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, the usual suspects, Pete McLaren, Keith Huewen, and I'm very pleased to say we are joined by former rider, BT Sport pundit, and now team owner, Michael Laverty. Michael, welcome to the show. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Harry. Nice to join you boys for a bit of a chat. But yeah, it's been a busy few weeks, so it's starting to calm down a little bit now, so it can actually enjoy a little bit of rest between the two GPs, but ready to travel to Misano next week.
It really has been busy for you.
Yeah, your idea of calming down and everyone else's idea of calming down are two different things, Michael. That means you're only doing 6 jobs this month. I've got to say that I'm going to blow a bit of smoke immediately straight up your kilt in that I am mega impressed, and as I think we all are around the world, at how one man manages to cover so much ground without falling down and basically exhausted. I mean, I think there's probably 3 Michael Lavertys, and one of them, the one we've got at the moment, is on the hook at home for babysitting duty.
Yeah. Thanks, Keith.
It is. I don't know how you do it, but is there a special technique you have? You only sleep 1 hour a day or something? Are you actually an alien?
I like my sleep, which is the strange thing, but I'm a bit of a... I work into late at night, so I'll go to bed at 1 and sleep through to 9 or 10 a.m. So I do get my rest because it's impossible to do it, to travel the world and do everything we do without actually getting that rest and recovery. But it has been a case of almost pushing those limits a little bit too far lately, where you start to feel a possibility of a little bit of burnout. So you have to be careful, because I have tried to be everywhere, tried to race myself in World Endurance, tried to be doing all the work with BT Sport, my academy. Then whenever this opportunity came to have my own team in Moto3, to put all the structure together, to find the staff, to find the funding was the most important thing, to find the sponsors, please them, all the technical partners. It's still an ongoing process. At least I've got some time, and I will get some staff eventually to help me. But at the minute, it is a one-man band, and I'm trying to juggle quite a few balls. But once everything's up and running, I hope I'll be able to delegate a little bit, offload some, still work on BT Sport as a pundit, and then I'll do my work between the events to make sure everything's running smoothly with the team and with the kids back home in the UK. So we're going to have a few different teams as a development platform for the young talent as well. So it's a big task, but one I'm envying, because I think it's a massive gap in racing in the UK that we're going to fill.
Was it always something, Michael, that you wanted to do?
Really,
or did you have an eye on this for a while, or did it just sort of come out of nowhere for you, the idea of a Moto3 team?
It came out of nowhere. It really did. It was never my intention, desire. I'd never really sat down and said I'd love to own my own team, but I think I just was in the right place at the right time, spoke to the right people, had the right connections, and all of a sudden, when we lost the Gresini team and the Petronas team from Moto3, there were grid slots available, and it just so happened I had spoke to Mike Trimby only a few weeks prior and said that there is that gap. We do need, if we're going to bring through the next MotoGP riders from the UK, we need a landing platform. We need somewhere for them to come to enter this paddock with a team who want them there. I know in the past from my brother and from Chaz Davies, and from actually further down the line before that, it's been better in recent years with Scott Redding, Cal Crutchlow and Bradley Smith. But before that, it was really difficult. You landed in an Italian or a Spanish team who didn't really want you, and you were always fighting a losing battle, whereas it's been a bit easier. But now we need to provide opportunities a little bit sooner, so before you're actually established. So whenever I've been talking about this so long, I'd mentioned it to Mike Trimby, and then all of a sudden he gave me a call and said, can you come for a chat? And the opportunity was there. So I immediately went to work with my sponsors and tried to put something together in the short time frame we had before the deadline arrived, that with 30 you had to put your application in. So we got it in. I didn't reach my target budget wise, but I got close enough that I was content that I would find the rest that was needed. And I've been working hard on that since. So to answer your question, I had if you'd have mentioned it to me a month before it happened, I would have had no plans, no desire, no forward thinking on it. But then sometimes, as they say, opportunities present themselves and you got to jump in. And it was one of those where it seemed like I've talked about it for so long, and I was in the right place to make it happen. So I thought, you know what, someone has to step up, and why not me?
Those grid slots are incredibly valuable. I mean, normally they don't get offered out there. I mean, they're oversubscribed. There are people that are on the doorstep of IRTA. Mike Trimby obviously being the main man there. It's a very rare situation, but it kind of underlines how much Dorna want this British market to work, isn't it?
Exactly that. I had spoke to people that had tried to access the paddock in the past and get grid spots and got refused. So I knew that it was a case of a window opening for us that wasn't going to be, we might not be able to pry that open in a year's time if I had waited when I was probably better positioned to make it happen. So the grid slot availability was the key issue to making this happen now, without actually, having that business plan in place and coming to IRTA and Dorna and saying that, in 2 years' time or whatever, we'll have the team already built and we'll have the structure. So I guess there's two things there. There's purchasing a current infrastructure and having the staff availability and then the grid spots as well. So yeah, and then having the support of IRTA, having the support of Dorna, because they're acutely aware that we will tick that box that hasn't been there for a number of years.
What's going on back in the paddock? This is a tricky one for you, Michael, but I know you'll be able to handle it. I mean, obviously at the moment we've got, kids that are finding themselves in some difficulty. There's a terrible feeling around the paddocks of the fact that we've lost 4 after last weekend. Another youngster, 16-year-old Filipino, that was killed at Buriram in Thailand in a 150 underbone race. Generally, because they're young, the feeling is that too young. Is there an age cut off for being killed in a race? Of course there's not. But the fact is that when it's that young, people feel it just that little bit more, and it creates bad publicity around the world. I mean, what's the feeling in the paddock? You're close to it at the moment. What is the situation regarding you as a team owner now, as an academy owner, the young academy that you started last year? I mean, these things must be playing very heavily on your rather overworked brain, I would think.
Yeah, it's something I've given a lot of thought about, and actually had to discuss with my title sponsor, with VisionTrack, before they came on board. Obviously, the publicity that could surround their company if something untoward were to happen to a rider on one of our bikes. So yeah, I had to be aware of that. We discussed it. There's no easy fix right now, but I know there is some discussions going on, or there seems to be, about a possible age limit change. In, you look at the Junior World Championship, it's 15 years old for a Moto3 World Championship bike, then 16 in GP. Could both those get lifted 1 year each? That's a possibility. But at the same time, there are some experienced riders in there that are the ones that are creating some of the havoc. So they've been in the GP paddock for a couple of years. They've got enough experience. They should know better. And you watch that, they're the ones who do the swerving down the straight. So there is a culture of almost the riders feel they're invincible at times. So they never close the throttle. They don't think of their fellow man alongside them on the track. Whereas I always was brought up to acutely aware of the dangers. I think because I grew up in Ireland and the road racing scene, and lost so many friends before friends of my father's or friends of friends. So I knew what the sport could do. But when you grow up racing in small mini bikes, and you can crash those easily, you can bump off your mate, and you feel like you get away with things, then you get onto a Moto3 bike and you've got an airbag, you've got massive runoff. You feel it, and Hodgie actually spoke about it last week, about when someone passes you on a Moto3 bike, they creep past, so it almost gives you a little bit of a strange sensation that you're not actually traveling that fast, because they're creeping past, and you feel like you can nudge them or you can swerve, but all of a sudden the knock-on effect when there's 10, 15 bikes around you is it can create a massive disaster. So there's no easy fix right now. I'd love to see the riders treating each other with a little bit more care, but obviously they all want to win. Nobody wants to close the throttle. They don't want to leave that extra few, another meter of gap from the front wheel to the back wheel will make the difference, but it also makes the difference in how much slipstream you get. So you can see why they do it, why they're not prepared to roll off for a split second, but you can also see what's happening when the 14-year-olds jump on an Asia Talent Cup bike, on a British Talent Cup bike, and they ride that same way as the guys they're trying to emulate and trying to race against in a few years. They do that same riding style, and then they don't have the experience, they don't have the skill to get out. They get target fixation, and that seems to be the problem. When a rider goes down in their path, there's nothing you can do. They've never experienced that, and there's no room for error. So there's a number of things going on, and a number of possible solutions, but there's no one fix. It's going to be a number of things. That we heard from Jürgen van der Gerberg about the gearbox scenario, where if we changed the ratios and closed those gaps, it meant that you wouldn't get as much of an advantage with slipstream. Perhaps that's one thing. More horsepower, so as it makes the difference between the riders, but you'll still end up with the closeness. It's something we've wanted for years, that parity where everyone's got the same equipment, but then it means there's no possibility to break away. So double-edged sword, and unfortunately no one solution available right now.
We've talked about this situation for in so many episodes of these podcasts, and actually, I just want to bring in Pete as well, because Pete has suggested multiple times that this idea of having more experienced riders, sort of almost giving a kind of a coaching session every weekend, almost. Pete, I don't know if you want to explain that a bit more and see what Michael thinks of that.
Yeah, exactly as you say, Harry. I mean, just that you get the impression that sometimes they're caught up in situations, as Michael was explaining then, that they may be not prepared for. They are incredibly talented. They've done a lot of top-level racing, but, suddenly they're in a Grand Prix championship, or they're on a Grand Prix size circuit, let's say. It's a different thing. It's a big challenge, isn't it? And I just think that, having someone that could maybe, someone that they respect, as in someone that's been there and done that, saying to them, look, this is what you need to watch out for. This is where you draw the line. This is fair racing and this isn't. And this is, I think that could maybe help, because as Michael says, there's not going to be one solution to this problem. It's going to be chipped away at from multiple angles. And that's what I think all that we can hope for, is to reduce these sort of tragedies that we've seen by working in maybe half a dozen different areas.
Yeah, it's interesting that obviously the likes of Valentino is the perfect person to have a sit down with all those riders, with all his experience, with the adulation that he would receive from the young riders. They would listen to what he says, because obviously when they sit down in front of the stewards, they're not taking it on board, and the penalties haven't worked to this level. Obviously, with Denis Onju being kept at home for 2 weekends, might make them think a little bit. There's going to be serious consequences. I'm going to be taken off the grid, but actually getting something to sink in from the god of MotoGP over the last number of years, that would be a perfect scenario in a classroom format, where they sit down face to face with their rivals, shake hands, and they know who that they're playing with each other's lives, and they got to treat them with care.
Let's hope then that they don't have access to any archive.
That's true.
Because they might just find that their peers in the past, particularly Valentino and Marc Marquez, of course, the latest of them, there's going to be quite a bit of archive that shows that they were also naughty boys in their time.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing,
very true.
Michael, talking of riders, you've got an all-British lineup coming for Moto3. I imagine, as with everything to do with that team setup, it's all come a bit last minute, but you've gone with Scott Ogden and Joshua Whatley. How did they come onto your radar? I mean, what is it about them that you feel that they are, it's their time to make the step up to Moto3?
Well, the whole ethos for the team was to provide opportunities, and they are the two next young riders from the UK who are ready. They've been through they both raced in the British Talent Cup. Actually, myself and Keith commentated on them in 2018, and Scott was up there battling. He won it the very next season in 2019. They've both been racing in Junior World Championship this year, and that has to be, for me, looking at the GP team, any kid that comes to join us will have to have spent at least 1 year in the Junior World Championship. That is the training ground. So both Scott and Josh, Scott's won a race this year in Jerez. Josh has been in the top 10 several times. So they were ready, and they ticked those boxes for me. And it's going to be a rookie season where they may surprise us, but I'm not expecting podiums or top fives. They've got to go in there and learn, and we may get some surprising results, and brilliant if we get it. If not, there's no pressure on them. So it's then creating the next step. So since we've actually announced the team, there's been interest. Obviously, I dipped my toes this year in the British Talent Cup. I had one rider for most of the season. In the last couple of rounds, I added a second. So we're going to grow that next season. But we're also looking now for the next steps of the European Talent Cup. I don't think Junior World Championship would be a step too far, but maybe European Talent Cup and putting a couple of bikes down there. So we've got the top riders in the British Talent Cup now that don't have anywhere to go. They don't have that next step. So we could provide that next season as well. Have a couple of VisionTrack bikes down there for perhaps the likes of Johnny Garness or Casey O'Gorman if he doesn't get his ride. The top riders from the UK. So we have we've got mini bike riders at 10 years old, then we've got British Talent Cup riders at 12, European Talent Cup riders at 13, and then we've got World Championship riders who are 16 and 17. So I want to have that clear path, and if young riders want to be World Championship riders of the future, that's the ladder they need to get on. So yeah, Josh and Scott are the most likely candidates. They ticked all the boxes for me. They're both young kids that I've known for years. I met Scott actually at Wilton Mill kart track, maybe 2017, and actually rode his pit bike and met him and his father for the first time back then. So I've always watched his career progress. So he ticks all the boxes. He's a hard worker. Likewise, Josh Whatley, his father was a sponsor of James Ellison back in the BSB days. So I always remember Josh before he raced himself flying about the BSB paddock on his mountain bike. And so I've known both kids for a lot of years, and it's nice that I can provide that opportunity for them to progress into World Championship racing.
You mentioned Casey O'Gorman. He's come through for rookies, hasn't he? He's coming into the rookies class next year, I think. He's been selected to join the Red Bull rookies, which is it seems like all of a sudden, I mean, it was going to happen here, wasn't it? That your interest with the academy that you set up and the pathway that you foresaw some time ago, and we talked about so many times. But now all of a sudden there's a few riders that are just beginning to just tickle the edges of that ladder and go into the places that we might expect them to go. I mean, from an academy owner point of view, I mean, what is the ladder like? What is the pool that you're drawing from like? Are we at the beginning of that process? Are we in the middle of that process? Where do you see us as a nation, if you like, Britain and Ireland together? Actually,
we have a lot of talent. So, you look at the riders we've got in World Superbike now. If any of those had the opportunity that's available now for a Moto3 rider, so your Jonathan Rays, your Tom Sykes, my brother Eugene, Leon Camere, Leon Haslam. There's so many riders. I've missed a few out. They were all potential MotoGP riders alongside Cal Crutchlow. And now we've got Sam Lowes, Jake Dixon, John McPhee, all good riders, but it's took them a little bit longer to get to the level they're at. They're approaching mid towards, well, Sam's just in his 30s now. So and then you look at back through the ranks. So in the British Superbikes now, we've got Taron McKenzie, we've got Bradley Ray, riders who rode the Red Bull rookies, but then got lost for a year or two, had to go back to BSB, and they had that ability to be in GP, in Moto3, Moto2. And if we had that structure, we'd have another MotoGP rider to fill Cal's boots immediately ready. Jake Dixon's arguably ready, but just the politics of it all, I don't think it's going to happen for him next year. But we do have that talent. And then looking below that, the talent pool, you mentioned Casey O'Gorman, there's Johnny Garness there. And actually below that you've got Carter Brown, Elvin Belfort, then my young academy kids. And then I went to the Fab meeting at the weekend and seen some young, fantastic 10-year-olds. Johnny and Casey were both racing there. And you've got Ethan Sparks below that, Archie O'Brien. You've got the riders in my academy. It is, I think we're definitely, we've got a good talent pool. We just need to provide those opportunities. We need to give them time down in Spain throughout the winter on the hot track conditions. Whenever we're here in the UK riding around on wet tires and freezing cold conditions, we need to have the budget to be able to send them down there. They can ride kart tracks, they can ride dirt track, they can ride motocross, they can get all that experience under their belt, and it just brings on that development path. So it is the 10,000 hour rule. You got to put the time in when you're young, and unfortunately in the UK, or the months of the year that we can actually really ride at that level are, March is even cold, but March through to November, and that's it stops. Whereas in Spain and in Italy, they ride year round, and they put in so many hours by the time they're 15, 16 that the development, the curve is so much shifted in their favor. So we need to shift it in our favor. But we've definitely got the talent. I've missed a load of names, even my own rider, Harry McCabe, who's won the FIM 160 series in the UK this year. He will go to Valencia to be in front of the FIM, in front of Dorna. So we've got a good talent pool. There's no doubt about that. There's plenty of riders. We just need to we need the money, and we need to provide those opportunities for them.
John McPhee, you manage John McPhee.
Yeah.
You look after his interests. Now you've got his team and he's not hired in it. How did that conversation go?
Well, to be honest, John, I wanted John to move on, and there were opportunities. We wanted him to move to Moto2 if possible. It became a lot of those doors closed at the wrong time, and John was having a bit of a tough season, so it was a difficult sell, and he was realistic on the possibilities. There were good Moto3 options available for him, and I didn't I didn't think it was right to put John in our team or to try and make that happen. I thought to move him on somewhere else was a better scenario, and John was happy to do that. So we have found a solution. I can't tell you today what it is, but he will be back in the GP paddock next season. And it won't be with us, unfortunately, as you said. But yeah, I think John's been very unlucky this season. He's got a lot more potential, a bit untapped. But it's nice to see that aggressive ability to lead that race in Austin last weekend. He was just so strong in that race, so that's what he's capable of. And yeah, I look forward to seeing him do it on a more frequent basis next season.
He looks brilliant.
He's obviously a good motocrosser, leading it to Kota.
Yeah, definitely.
He did look brilliant going around the America's track.
I can't wait to see what the Formula One go like round there, Harry. On those
they've. I saw in the news recently that F1 and MotoGP have sort of come together on this and said to Kota, "Look, you need to do something. Otherwise, because this isn't, these bumps are not good for the bikes, obviously, but I don't think they're going to like them for the cars too much either. So I think it may actually there may be a bit of cross communication there and working together for the greater good. Wouldn't that be lovely?" Now, I'm going to get into trouble if I don't ask any of the millions of questions that have come in from our listeners, Michael, and some of them you have covered off already. So, but the first one I've got on here, and I suppose this comes with the idea of opportunities, especially for, and I know we're an international show, but naturally when you have four British blokes on the podcast, there is going to be a little bit of a sway here. So apologies for that, but we're going to go with it because Speed and Conviction has asked on Instagram, the future of British riders, what is the ideal path? Now, he said, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but my 5-month-old son wants to be ahead of all the European riders. So what do you say to someone who is right at the start? What is the, in an ideal world, to get to let's say, to get to MotoGP, what is the ideal path? Because there is so much talent, not just as you described, coming up through the ranks in Great Britain, but, internationally, there is huge, arguably, people are going to fall by the wayside, aren't there? Because there's so much talent and there aren't enough opportunities.